It was nearly 2 a.m. in Seattle, and Emily couldn't sleep. The rain was light but constant, tapping gently against the windows. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her body next to James. Her husband of 7 years, but it didn't feel like he was really there. They hadn't had a real conversation in weeks. They still lived together, shared meals, walked their dog, paid bills, but it all felt quiet. Not peaceful, quiet, but distant, tired, quiet. It was like being alone with someone right beside you. James had fallen asleep hours ago. Emily glanced at her phone again. 2:17 a.m. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps at the door. Not urgent, not loud, just unsure. She pulled on a sweater, her heart picking up pace. At that hour, no one should have been knocking. When she opened the door, the porch light spilled over 3 familiar faces she hadn't seen in over a year. Alex stood in the middle, his eyes warm, nervous. On either side of him were Sam and Lily, his best friends since college. People Emily had known almost as well as she once knew herself. Back then, Alex had been her everything. They had dated for 3 years before life pulled them in different directions. Their last conversation had been at a wedding where he looked at her and said softly, "I never stopped wondering about us." She never answered. She couldn't. She was already married by then. Now, he was standing at her door, soaked from the rain, a sheepish smile on his face. "Hey," Alex said, brushing water from his hair. "This is kind of a disaster. We were supposed to stay at a hotel nearby, but it got double booked. No rooms left. Everything else is full because of that tech conference in town." Emily blinked. "You're kidding." He shook his head. "I wouldn't knock on your door at 2 a.m. unless we were really out of options. I swear." She glanced back into the house. James was still asleep. The living room was tidy. It wasn't like they had a plan for tomorrow. Or for anything, really. "I know it's a big ask," Alex added, "but could we stay? Just for the night. We'll crash wherever. Couch, floor doesn't matter." Sam and Lily both gave small, apologetic waves. Emily hesitated, but only. For a second, she wasn't thinking about James. She wasn't thinking about the past. She was just tired of the silence. "Come in," she said quietly. They stepped inside, grateful and damp, shaking off the cold. Emily brought out extra towels, laid out blankets, and offered them tea. Lily curled up on the armchair like it was hers. Sam kicked off his shoes and sank into the couch like he'd never left. And Alex, he stayed standing in the kitchen, watching Emily with that same look she remembered from years ago, the kind that made her feel like she mattered. "Thanks," he said, his voice soft. "It's okay," she replied, unsure of what she meant by it. They talked quietly while Sam and Lily got comfortable. Emily found herself laughing at stories from their road trip, ridiculous things that happened on the drive from Portland. It was the most she'd smiled in weeks. James never came out of the bedroom. Around 3:30 a.m., Sam had passed out. Lily was half asleep on the chair, and Emily was still in the kitchen with Alex. They sipped tea from mismatched mugs, their conversation turning quieter, more personal. "You look tired," he said gently. She gave a half smile. "I haven't really been sleeping. Still writing?" She shook her head. "Haven't picked up a pen in months. That's not you." Emily didn't reply, but something about his words stung, not in a painful way, but in a way that made her realize how far she'd drifted from herself. He looked down at his cup. "I still think about you sometimes. About us. Alex, I'm not trying to mess things up," he said quickly. Sometimes you keep something in your heart for too long and it becomes part of who you are." Emily swallowed hard. She had no words for that. They sat in silence for a moment. The kind that felt honest, full. Unlike the kind of silence she was used to at home when she finally stood up to head to bed. He reached out and touched her hand barely. Just enough to say, "I still see you." "Good night, Em," he said. She nodded. "Good night." When she walked back into the bedroom, James was snoring softly, facing the wall. The room felt colder now, even though the rain had stopped. Emily climbed under the covers and stared at the ceiling again. Only this time, it wasn't silence that kept her awake. It was something else. a feeling she hadn't had in a long time. She wasn't sure if it was guilt or hope, but she knew one thing for certain. Something had changed the moment she opened that door. Morning came quickly in Emily's quiet house. The rain had stopped and a pale sunlight slipped through the curtains, washing the kitchen in soft light. Emily was already awake, standing by the window with a cup of coffee in her hand, watching the world wake up outside. The house felt different, fuller, somehow, but still heavy with unspoken things. Alex, Sam and Lily were downstairs, making breakfast and moving around like they belonged there. Lily hummed quietly while scrambling eggs, and Sam was busy trying to fix the slow coffee machine, grumbling under his breath. Alex sat at the kitchen table, eyes fixed on Emily, like he was waiting for her to say something. But she wasn't sure what. Emily took a deep breath. She hadn't realized how much she missed this kind of easy company, the kind that didn't expect much but gave plenty. When she glanced at Alex, she saw a hint of the person she used to be reflected back at her, like a mirror she hadn't looked in for years. "Are you still writing?" Alex asked suddenly, breaking the quiet. His voice was gentle but curious. Emily shook her head. "Not really. Not lately. You should," he said simply. "You were always good at it. You had fire in you." Fire. That word hit her like a spark she didn't know she still had. It was the last thing James had ever said to her before the fire faded. Before the silence grew between them, she didn't answer. The truth was, she didn't know if that fire was still inside. As breakfast wrapped up, James walked in. He had come home early from work, which was unusual for him. When he saw the three guests, his face tightened for just a second. But he kept his voice steady. "Hey," he said, nodding at them. "I wasn't expecting company." Emily looked at him, surprised by how little he seemed to care. Maybe how much he was trying not to care. James was always the practical one, the quiet anchor of their home. But now he looked like a man who had noticed something shifting but didn't want to admit it. The day moved slowly. Emily and Alex found themselves sitting together on the porch, watching the soft fall of the afternoon rain. Lily and Sam had gone out to run errands, giving them a moment alone. "You look tired," Alex said again, this time softer. Emily sighed. "It's been a long time since I felt rested." He nodded knowingly. "You don't have to say it, but I see it." That moment felt honest in a way she hadn't experienced in years. She realized how much she'd been holding back, not just from James, but from herself. She was scared to admit how lost she felt. "Why did you come back?" she asked quietly. Alex looked at her, eyes steady. "Because sometimes when everything's quiet and dark, you realize what you really want. And sometimes you have to face what you left behind." Emily swallowed hard. It was true. The silence with James had grown too loud. And something inside her was breaking. When Sam and Lily returned, the mood shifted again. They brought energy and laughter, filling the rooms with stories from the city and jokes that felt light and easy. It reminded Emily of happier times, times when life wasn't about just surviving, but about living. That evening, James stayed in the bedroom. Emily didn't see much of him. She felt like a visitor in her own home. But Alex stayed with her in the kitchen, talking quietly as they cleaned up dinner. Their conversation drifted from the past to dreams for the future, from old memories to new possibilities. "You ever think about what could have been?" Alex asked, looking into her eyes. Emily nodded. "Sometimes, but not all the time." He pushed gently. She smiled a little sadly. "Not all the time." Alex reached out and touched her hand again, like the night before. It was simple, but it carried weight. It was a reminder she wasn't alone. That night, Emily lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the house. James was still distant, wrapped up in his own world. But the house felt less empty with Alex and his friends there. Their presence stirred something inside her: hope. Maybe. Or the courage to face the truth she'd been avoiding. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if things with James could be fixed or if her heart was already turning towards something new. All she knew was that letting Alex in had opened a door she hadn't realized was closed. The third night was heavy. The house, once filled with quiet laughter and light conversation, now felt charged with a tension Emily couldn't ignore. James barely spoke to the guests anymore. He avoided eye contact, spent more time in the garage or the backyard than inside. When Emily tried to reach him, asking if he wanted to talk or maybe share dinner, he just shrugged and said, "Not now." His silence was a wall between them. Cold and hard, Emily felt trapped between two worlds, one with James, who was withdrawing, and one with Alex, who seemed to understand her in ways James no longer could. The old familiarity with Alex brought warmth, but it also made her feel guilty. She wondered if she was betraying James, or worse, herself. That evening, the house was quieter than usual. Sam and Lily went to bed early, leaving Emily and Alex alone in the kitchen. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional clink of a spoon against a mug were the only sounds. They sat across from each other at the table, the distance between them both physical and emotional. Alex looked up, his eyes searching hers. "Do you still love him?" he asked, his voice low but steady. Emily didn't answer right away. The question caught her off guard, cutting straight to the heart of everything she was avoiding. She stared down at her hands resting on the table. "I don't know," she whispered. "Sometimes I think I love the idea of what we used to have, but not the way things are now." Alex nodded slowly, understanding. That's different from love. It's holding on to a memory, hoping it will bring back what's lost. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm scared to let go, but I'm also scared to stay." Alex reached across the table and gently took her hand. The touch was light, but it spoke volumes. It was a promise of patience, of understanding, not pressure or expectation. For a moment, Emily allowed herself to breathe in that comfort. "I'm not trying to fix anything," Alex said softly. "I just want you to know you're not alone. You deserve to feel alive again." That night, Emily lay awake, feeling a strange mix of guilt and clarity. Her mind raced with memories and possibilities, with a future she'd been too afraid to imagine. The quiet house no longer felt empty, but alive with new chances. The next day, James remained distant. Emily watched him from across the room, wondering if he sensed the change in her. But he said nothing. The unspoken words filled the space between them like thick fog. Alex stayed close, offering support without demands. Sam and Lily were more relaxed, their presence a reminder that life could still be light and hopeful, even in the middle of heartbreak. As evening fell, Emily found herself standing on the porch, looking out at the fading light. Alex joined her quietly, standing beside her without saying a word. The silence between them was comfortable, a space where she could simply be herself without fear or expectation. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know what's going to happen next." Alex smiled gently. "Neither do I, but sometimes that's okay. Sometimes not knowing is the first step toward something better." Emily felt a small spark of hope. For the first time in a long while, she believed that maybe she could find happiness again, whether with James or without him. That night, as she closed her eyes, she didn't feel the heavy weight of loneliness. Instead, there was a quiet strength growing inside her, a readiness to face whatever came next. The morning light came softly through the curtains, but the air in the house felt different, lighter, yet heavy with change. Emily woke early, her mind swirling with thoughts that had been growing louder each day. She moved quietly through the kitchen, where Alex, Sam, and Lily were already up, packing their bags and getting ready to leave. Their short visit had stretched longer than expected, but something in the house had shifted, and Emily knew it was time for endings and beginnings to take their turns. James appeared in the hallway, carrying his briefcase but looking unusually serious. He paused, staring at the three guests who were gathering their things. "I think it's time for me to go," James said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. Emily felt a mixture of relief and sadness rise inside her. She stepped forward, meeting his eyes. There was no anger there, just tired acceptance. "I think you're right," she said softly. James nodded, running a hand through his hair. "We've been holding on to something that's not there anymore. I didn't want to admit it, The words hung in the air, heavy but honest. Emily realized they had both been pretending for so long that it was easier to stay than to face the truth. As James packed a small bag and moved toward the door, Emily felt the weight of years lifting off her shoulders. It wasn't easy. It never would be. But the air was clearer now, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a quiet hope. After James left, the house felt empty again, but in a different way. Sam and Lily said their goodbyes with warm hugs and promises to stay in touch. Lily whispered to Emily, "Sometimes endings are just the start of something softer." When they were gone, Emily sat on the porch alone, the cool breeze brushing against her face. She was wrapped in a blanket, thinking about everything that had happened. The past weeks had been a whirlwind, painful, confusing, but real. Alex came out quietly and sat beside her. For a long time, they didn't say a word. The silence between them was filled with understanding, a shared sense of what had changed. Finally, Emily broke the silence. "3 was more than I could handle." Alex chuckled softly, a sound full of warmth and familiarity. "Yeah, I figured." She smiled, looking up at the stars that were just beginning to shine in the night sky. "But I let you all in because I couldn't sleep." Alex turned to her, his eyes steady and kind. "And now?" Emily took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I think I'm finally awake." That night, as they sat together under the stars, Emily felt something new growing inside her. It wasn't just attraction or nostalgia. It was a sense of freedom, chance to be herself again, without fear or hesitation. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Healing never is. But she also knew she was ready to take the first step. Because sometimes letting go isn't about losing something. It's about making room for something better, and for Emily. That night was the beginning of a new chapter, where she could finally choose to live for herself,